this mousepad is special in many ways. It's the obsidian pad from Machina Ultima, and you can get one to feel pretty much exactly as you would like. I've got the A1 III, which mimics the Saturn Pro, and it pretty much feels like what you would imagine the Saturn Pro would feel like if it were a glass pad. But this is not just another glass mousepad, as a lot of the production has actually been done by hand. To quickly cover a few details before we move on to the surface, these mousepads have rounded corners and rounded edges, so there is less chance of any skin irritation happening while you use the pad. The base is very sticky and there is no way you should be able to move the mousepad accidentally while in game. It's also a good thing that when the pad gets old in a few years and the base loses its stickiness, you can actually contact Machina Ultima and just buy a new base for the pad. It should be very cheap and you can extend the lifetime of the product. That's enough of the details, and the first thing that I want to mention about the surface of the A1 III is that it is pressure sensitive. This is extremely unique to glass mousepads, so when you use the A1 III and you apply more pressure towards the surface of the pad, you will actually increase the friction and therefore have more control. This does not really happen with any other glass mousepad. For example, it's not a thing with the SkyPad 3.0 or the Serapad Kid. The amount of friction that you can increase by applying more pressure is somewhat limited, as it's not really as much as you can apply with an Artisan Exoft base or the LethalGamingGear Saturn Pro, for example. This is for in-game scenarios. If you just apply as much pressure as you can towards the surface of the A1 III, the friction is actually insane. So in theory you can actually get more friction out of the A1 III than you can get from the LethalGamingGear Saturn Pro, but in real situations it's not possible. The second thing I want to talk about is that the glide of the mousepad and how well it performs is heavily affected by mouse feet. With the X-Lite version 3, the mousepad feels very smooth and there is a decent amount of stopping power, but it's still very easy to change directions when you're tracking a target. But with the Starlight 12 stock feet, the experience is somewhat rough and there is quite a lot of friction when changing directions. This makes tracking quite a bit harder, for example any close range fights with Tracer or any lightning gun duels in Quake Champions. With some mice and feet, like for example the DeathAdder V3 Pro and the G Pro X Superlight, the experience is actually quite fast, but that provides no downsides to me as there is still enough stopping power. Overall, the experience is mostly just bad with mice that have bad and small stock feet. How much the experience changes because of the mouse feet is hard to describe, but if you look at this graph, on the left we have more control and on the right we have more speed, and for example the Starlight 12 is mostly on the left side with the control, whereas the X-Lite version 3 is somewhat in the middle, and the G Pro X Superlight and the DeathAdder V3 Pro are more on the faster side. With this surface I at least enjoy a faster experience more than a controlled one. And even if you use the DeathAdder V3 Pro or the Superlight with this mousepad, the experience is still slower than with the SkyPad 3.0. And to give you guys a little bit of context as to what kind of feet I prefer with this mousepad and for what kind of games. For example, the MM712 stock feet are not the best, so the experience with the Machina Ultima mousepad is quite rough. There is quite a bit of friction, but not quite as much as with the Starlight 12. So this mouse feels very good for jack FPS games, but not so much for tracking with this mousepad, as there is that roughness and it's not the easiest to switch directions. The same kind of applies with the Starlight 12, not very good at all for tracking heavy games because of that added friction that this mouse has, or these feet have with this surface. Then again, for example the G Pro X Superlight, this one has the G Pro wireless feet. This feels very good with this mousepad. Very good for tracking heavy games, very good for jack FPS. This is much faster than the previous ones as you saw in that graph. The X-Lite version 3, same again, can be used for any games, tracking heavy jack FPS, very good feeling. It's actually nice that there is still that added dynamic friction compared to a SkyPad 3.0 with this. And yeah, same again with the DeathAdder V3 Pro. And one good thing about this pad compared to any other glass pad is that this does not stick to my skin. The Serapad skin feels similar, but it's still way more sticky than this one. So I could actually even use this without a sports sleeve or a gaming sleeve. But I just enjoy the experience much more, and it's still faster with the sleeve than without it. But that's enough for the surface, and let's discuss the pricing, which is quite hefty, as the large versions costs 170 euros. That is a lot of money for a mousepad, no matter how handmade it is. I mean, it's not too bad in the sense that this should last you for a lifetime, but there is also the issue that which one would you choose and would you be happy with your choice? There are so many options, and even for somebody like me who has tried all of these pads that are marked as examples, it was still a very hard choice, and I think I did not make the best one for me. I possibly would have enjoyed the A1 or the A1 IV much more. This is not going to be something that I will or will not recommend. It's entirely up to you if you want to purchase one or not. I do understand that it's very expensive at 170 euros, and those even more polished ones are even more expensive. But in today's world, with all the mass-produced products, all the AI art and such, it's kinda nice to see something that has at least partly been made by hand. If you choose to buy a Machina Ultima Obsidian pad, I do not recommend for you to go any slower than the A1. These more controlled glass surfaces sound very interesting, but in my opinion it just does not work quite as well with glass as it does with cloth. If you have any questions, you can post them on the comments or join my Discord. There will be a separate channel made for all the Machina Ultima kind of stuff. And the guy who makes these pads will also be there to answer any questions you have, so you can get the exact pad that you want. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you in the next one.